Hi everyone, it's Miss Amara. I just wanted to do a quick video to review Point of View. I like this comic because it reminds us that when we're talking about point of view and perspective, that we need to really get in the reader or the main character's head a little bit and see how they are viewing what's happening in the story. The techniques that the author uses to develop point of view are really simple. It's the character's thoughts, words, and actions. Sometimes it's dealing with the main character, like in our book with Moonshadow. Sometimes, though, point of view is also developed by using other characters' thoughts, other characters' words, and other characters' actions, and seeing how the main character reacts. The other thing that I want to talk about with point of view is the strategies that you need to use. Whenever we're talking about point of view, you need to use some strategies. One is you should always go back and reread, reviewing the gist of the section. From there, ask yourself some questions. What is the claim? What is my answer going to be? What is the evidence to back it up? And then what is the tone or the attitude that the character is having at that point in time? Make sure that you're rereading and skimming, always going back to the text, pulling out and citing the text evidence that's going to make your claim true. How are you going to prove it? And then finally, always get into that mental debate in your head. What is going to be the best word to describe the tone and what's happening in that section of reading? You always have to make sure that you're looking closely, doing a mental check. Is this showing how Moonshadow feels? Like pity? Is it sad? Is it angry? Have that little thought going back in your mind. In this example from the book, we're looking at Moonshadow's point of view. Look at that first sentence. It says, "Suddenly, I felt as if I had come home. I had seen the town of the Tang people even now in the late afternoon sun, not as it is now, full of souvenir shops, neon signs, but as it was then. The houses and the stores had all the right colors and shapes, for they had been built not by demons, but by the Tang people. It looked much like the streets in Canton, the city of the Middle Kingdom from which I had sailed. The roofs of the buildings were tiled and arched, and the walls, windows, and doorways were in gold or red or green. Before the fronts of the buildings were sensible safeguards against demons of any kind. There were lines lying down protectively before some. Other houses had pictures of door guardians on their door, and still others had scrolls of red paper on the doorways, asking a certain god to protect the inhabitants against demons." Right from the very first sentence, suddenly I felt as if I had come home. The point of view for Moonshadow there is he finally feels what? How does he finally feel coming to this new part of the town? Well, if you were talking about tone, he would feel comfortable. He would feel settled. He would feel happy. Those would be tone words that we're talking about when we're talking about point of view, because for the first time in our story, Moonshadow feels like he's finally beginning to see where he might fit in or finally feel comfortable enough. So when we're talking about point of view, again, you have to think of, is it the thoughts, words, or actions of Moonshadow? And in this case, what would you say would be the technique that the author used? If you said thoughts, you're correct. Because here, these are all Moonshadow's inner thoughts that we're seeing. I really like the way that this picture shows point of view and perspective. In this book that we're reading right now, we have to really put ourselves in Moonshadow's body. You know, look at things through his eyes and see things in a new, fresh light. We have to put ourselves in his shoes and really get inside his mind, take into account his culture. Remember that Moonshadow is 8 years old, and he's coming from a rural town in China where the culture is very, very different. His family was on a rice farm, and he was out in the middle of the country. These are what the outfits wore, the family would wear. We really have to really understand our book, Dragon Wings, we have to take into account his culture. How would an 8-year-old boy coming from a rural town really adapt to a bustling city like San Francisco? It changes everything really for us. We have to look at things through his eyes. We have to put ourselves looking at everything through his lens, and our perspective is going to change. His feelings are going to change, and that's what we have to take into account when we're talking about point of view. So to review very quickly, the techniques that an author used to develop point of view would be thoughts, words, and actions. That's what the author does in his writing to get his point of view across for the main character. The strategies that we need to use for point of view would be to reread a section for gist, make sure that you're understanding and answering the questions that's being asked with your claim, backed up and proven with evidence, and also take into account the tone. We all have to really read this book as if we are Moonshadow. So we're looking at new experiences. When we're talking about tone, we have to talk about those feelings. You know, how is he feeling at this particular point in the book and in this particular situation? That's all playing into point of view and perspective.